The Exorcist Believer is a 2023 supernatural horror movie, directed by David Gordon Green and co-written by Green and Peter Sattler, from a story by Scott Teems, Danny McBride, and Green. It's the sixth installment in the Exorcist franchise and works as a direct sequel to the 1973 classic, The Exorcist. It stars Leslie Odom Jr., Lydia Jewett, Olivia O'Neill, and Ellen Burstyn. The story's about two girls who disappear into the woods and return 3 days later with no memory of what happened to them. So the father of one of the girls seeks out Chris McNeil, who's been forever altered by what happened to her and her daughter 50 years ago.
Don't be scared.
We've met before.
So leading up to this film coming out, when I saw the trailer, I didn't feel like a lot of people. I wasn't super amped for this. To me, it just looked very run-of-the-mill Exorcist movie with just a big name attached to it. It didn't really feel like it was doing anything super original, at least from the trailer. But I tried to keep as open of a mind as I possibly could going in, but just not expecting to be blown away by it. And the other day, I was able to catch a screening of The Exorcist. Its 50th year anniversary screening. It's like remastered and the contrast is altered to make it even more intense. And I was floored by it. It's such a brilliant movie. But I was also hit with the fact that, to me, this is my opinion. This whole review is my opinion. And everybody out there, you're going to probably have a different opinion on a lot of the things I say in this. But I was really hit by watching the classic. One, how amazing of a film it is. It's breathtaking, the pacing of it, the way it's shot, the mood, the atmosphere. It's just an absolute classic, one of the greatest horror movies, period. But I was hit with the fact that this is definitely a movie of a different time. I've seen some people say that if The Exorcist was released today, it would still be a hit, and I don't agree at all. I think the pacing of it, you have to really be patient with that movie, and it just kind of takes its time slowly building the dread. And yes, there would be a fan base for it. I feel like it would hit more in that A24 crowd, though. I don't think it would be this huge pop culture phenomenon at all like it was back then. But that in no way is me saying the movie doesn't work. It does. It's still a breathtaking classic. I just don't think that what people want today from their horror movies, at least like the masses, lends itself to that film. But with that being said, going into this, I had low expectations, and I had just seen this masterpiece, this incredible movie, and it had been a while since I saw it, so it hit me even more like almost a first watch. And as this movie gets going, for the first half, probably at least the first act, but probably the first half, I was going, hey, I might come out of this movie with a glowing review and being like, this is one of the best movies of the year, because the setup, everything that happens when these girls disappear, it feels like a missing persons drama, creepy drama kind of thing. And it's really well done. Because for one, this movie is gorgeous. It's just like anything David Gordon Green does. It's masterfully shot and pacing and all that. It just looks incredible. It's very polished. There's a lot of, atmospheric shots and angles, and it just is a well put together looking movie. But the story is more of where I've had problems with David Gordon Green, not so much the look of his films. And so for the first half of this, I'm with it. I'm like, I really like these characters. Leslie Odom Jr. is fantastic in this, and you really feel like you get invested in this guy and his struggles and everything he goes through, leading up to this moment and this stuff happening, because it does a good job of kind of giving you enough of a backstory without getting too long-winded. And so it feels developed enough that you feel attached to these characters. But then as it starts to get into the second half and things start to develop, that's when I started having a problem with this. Because for one, it feels tonally like a pretty big shift, which I don't have necessarily a huge problem with, but it just feels like a kind of like a different movie in a lot of ways. But that's when it started feeling soulless and very corporate and very paint by numbers, like they were following a script of things they had to do. And it really felt forced, the way they did callbacks and fan service. It just feels shoehorned in and not organic and not like it flows. And honestly, like there's literally no reason to even have some of these things in it. Ellen Burstyn's character especially, to me, is absolutely wasted in this movie, and honestly could have been taken out and it wouldn't have changed this movie at all. And I feel like that's a real shame. And I understand she's an older woman. There's probably only certain things that they could get her to do or that they even wanted to have her do because of her age and etc. But still, it just felt very like pushed in there. It reminded me of the Sally Hardesty character from the most recent Texas Chainsaw Massacre. How that just felt totally shoved in there, didn't fit tonally, makes no sense, and it's just like there for fan service, there to make fans of this franchise be like, yay. I don't know, man. Like, honestly, it just really didn't work for me. And so that was the beginning of me going, uh-oh, I'm starting to see this thing shift, but once again, the visuals are still looking gorgeous. The makeup, the designs of these girls as they transform, it's fantastic. It looks incredible. It's like what we saw in the Halloween franchise, where visually they're amazing. Everything from the set design, the lighting, like they just look incredible. And this is right there as well. It just looks the part. But then as it continues, it starts to feel more and more like forced. Like, one of my big problems with it, and I've heard a lot of people tearing up this movie today, but one of my problems I have with it, I haven't really heard a lot of people talk about, but it felt, and I'm not someone that ever cries out woke. I hate how that's overused today and people don't even put it in the right context. I hate when people, talk about all that, but I also hate like what Disney's doing, where it feels like they have the PC police out there and it feels like they have to get every race, every religion, every, whatever, sexual orientation, like you name it, like they're trying to get every demographic they possibly can, like they're Walmart trying to hire a staff. And this movie felt very much like that. There's so much of that just feels forced into it, which sucks because I'm someone who's all about equality. I love nothing more than to see people that don't get chances in certain things, getting opportunities, getting acting roles, getting directing roles, like, whatever it is, I love seeing that. And horror is fantastic for doing that. But there's a way to do it, and then there's a way where it just feels forced, and it doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel like it has heart. It doesn't feel like it has soul. It doesn't feel like it's coming from a genuine place. And that's how this movie felt for me. It just doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel like it's really, from a good place. It just feels like it's a corporate decision to make money. And then as you get deeper into the final act, that's when the religious stuff started to hit me in the face and started to really annoy me. Because don't get this twisted, I'm not a big religious guy. I have my own spiritual beliefs, whatever, but I am a big fan of religious horror. Like when it's done right, like the original Exorcist, it's phenomenal. It doesn't feel preachy. It doesn't feel forced. It feels like you're an observer and watching these things happen without them trying to say, hey, audience, you should do this. You need to believe this. And that's what this started to do. It felt very forced. It has all these different religions involved. And it's like, we all need to come together. And I straight up felt like there was this kumbaya moment, people holding hands, all singing kumbaya. Like, it literally feels like this movie is trying to do that as it gets to the final act. And it's like, it just felt very cringe, very cheesy, absolutely so corny to me. And I'm not going to give away any spoilers there of what goes down. That's stuff that you see mostly in the trailer, but it just once again felt forced, felt paint by numbers, felt corporate, felt about making money, not about trying to find the soul of what The Exorcist is. Because I'm a big fan of the original and even more of a fan of Exorcist 3. Those movies did it right. This just doesn't feel like it's from that at all. It felt like they looked at that and tried to break it down into some kind of algorithm, and an AI generated, spit it out, said, this is what The Exorcist is. I mean, but as much as this sounds like a negative review, it's still not a horrible movie. I did find myself entertained. Like I said, it looks incredible. This movie absolutely looks gorgeous. And all of the cast, every single person in this does a fantastic job of playing their role. The only one that just kind of felt like they were there was Ellen Burstyn, but she's super old, but her acting just, it felt kind of wooden, and I know that's calling out a legend, and I'm not trying to diss her by any means. I'm just saying it how I saw it. It just felt wooden, but her role is so small and insignificant really in this anyway. Whatever. And there's some good jump scares. It does have some creepy scenes. There's one scene in particular that I thought was pretty savage and I enjoyed. But a lot of the stuff that I really enjoyed, like I said, is mostly in that first half of the movie. But then as it gets into that second half, it just starts to slow down and feel like, I don't know, there's a lot of repeating the same stuff over and over. And and it's like they're almost running out of ideas. I don't know. Like a lot of the uniqueness of this was in that first half of this film. And there's some great ideas here. I think in a lot of ways, like on paper, this could have really worked. The ideas could have really worked. But I don't know who it is who writes the dialogue, who puts this stuff together, but it's like they can't help themselves but be corny. It was my problem with Halloween Kills, you know, evil dies tonight. There's literally stuff like that in this where it just feels like this city of people coming together and getting corny and cheesy. And like, I understand the idea behind that of a community working together and people, you know, uniting and putting aside their differences, and I get all that, but there's like a way you can do that where it feels nuanced and it works. It feels like art. It feels creative. And then there's a way where it just feels forced. And a lot of that has to do with the dialogue. And this movie the dialogue just does not work. And like I said, especially in the second half, because for a big chunk of this, you feel these families, you feel what they're going through, you feel their pain. And it works for me. I really enjoyed a lot of that, even though there were scenes even in that first half where I was like, but a lot of it really worked. But then it just, I don't know. And then as it gets really into that final act, it felt very much like every other Exorcist movie we've seen in the last 20 years. Didn't really feel like they were doing much original at all. The girls felt a little wasted to me. You know, not trying to give anything away, but they just don't do a whole lot other than look creepy. You know, there are some fun jump scares, like I said, and a few little bit gory scenes. I don't understand people saying, I mean, I guess it's hyperbole, but I don't see the whole scariest movie or goriest movie or any of that stuff at all. I mean, the general population, the average movie viewer, I think will be creeped out by this if you're someone that doesn't see a lot of horror. But if you're someone that watches a lot of horror, I can't really see this movie scaring you too much, other than, like I said, a few scenes. But it's still entertaining. I think if you go into this with lowered expectations, not expecting anything crazy, and definitely try your best to not compare it to the original, because they're, you know, I mean, you can't compare to that. That's really not fair. And that's kind of one of those problems when you try to do something like this where, you know, 2018 Halloween works, but in this case, it's like you're going up against what a lot of people consider to be the greatest horror movie ever made, one of the greatest films ever made, and you're saying that all those other sequels in between don't exist, and so you're literally directly connecting yourself to that legendary movie, and that's just a tough ask, and it just doesn't hold up to that. But if you're just wanting to get out to the theaters and watch something spooky, creepy, you know, I think you'll have fun with it. Like I said, it's definitely not a horrible movie, but because it's going up against that huge, you know, Goliath icon of The Exorcist, it gets a lot more of criticism from me. And I just got to call it how I see it. I just felt like this was a very uninspired, paint-by-numbers, corporate type of horror that we're seeing a lot of, especially from Blumhouse. I feel like more and more they're going away from making these indie, really cool, creative horror movies and just getting more and more about, hey, what sells? What can make us more and more money? It's starting to feel very corporate, and it's a shame, because for a long time we knew we had to count on A24 and Blumhouse to come up with these unique original horror properties, and it's starting to feel like A24 is all we got left. I mean, there are some other ones, of course, but I'm saying as far as those two.
God played that trick on you.
But that's going to do it for me today. Those are my thoughts. Thank you so much for checking this out. And if you enjoyed this, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and ding that little bell, because that is the best way to keep track of this channel. And when I post videos like this, and I post videos like this every single week, I also want to give a huge, massive, enormous thank you to the Ghost Pirate crew, to you guys over on Patreon, and to the channel members over here. You guys mean absolutely everything to me. And if you would like to help support this channel over on Patreon, there's a link down in the description. Or if you want to become a channel member and support the channel over here, there's a button right down there that says join. But like always, thank you so much for watching. Please crush that like button. And remember, guys, horror can be fun. If you enjoyed this, click right here to watch my review of Saw X. And I'll see you guys next time.